Dear Lord, I want to thank you for this opportunity of studying together. Two groups separated apart, so many miles, so many kilometers, but the technique is making it possible to join together in fellowship. I thank you for that, and I praise your name for this opportunity and this the technique that makes it possible as a movement also to come together every week again, to be connected with each other through the internet. It's really a rich blessing. Without this communication and these techniques, it won't be possible for this movement to exist. And I thank you, Lord, that you brought us together this day, and I pray that this hour of study may contribute to a better understanding of who you are, what the character of your kingdom looks like, because I think that's the purpose of our studies in the end, that we understand not just the earthly kingdoms, but to compare and contrast them with your kingdom. And when we understand the earthly kingdoms, we understand your kingdom and the character of your kingdom better too. I pray that we have a proper discussion, a conversation. I pray that you bless our conversation, that you join us this hour. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. So good evening again. My name is Arjan. I'm from the Netherlands. Some of you I've met before, some not. How many are we? Oh yeah. And I'm really looking forward to study with you. I'm used to, and English is not my native, it's not my first language. I'm used to present in English with translation. So if I'm a little slow sometimes, or I have to think about words or sentences, forgive me for that. But hopefully we'll get there.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I was just checking something. It has been recorded. I didn't hear the recording sound somewhere.
Wow, that's a very good point. And I haven't seen that either. Let me just see if it is.
It is.
Yes, it is being recorded. Yes, I see that now. I just was looking for it. It is, yes. Oh, good.
Okay, thank you. I want to start with a short introduction. We, as you know, we're in the within our movement studying together. There's some Sunday law messages, as we call them, and I happen to be one of them. In my presentation this morning, I'm not going to repeat what I did in the past. So in January this year, I did a 3-part series in Germany. And in my studies today, I'm assuming that you've watched those presentations, because I'm not going to repeat those, at least not in detail that I shared it there. I will do a short review of it, and I hope we will be able to have a proper discussion or question and answer after that. Sorry, I realize I'm not fully set up, but anyway, I'll do it. Okay, so before I go to my the line that I talked about in Germany, I want to start with a line that that starts in 1989. Because we want to understand the dispensation of 2021 to National Sunday Law. That has been my premise from the beginning. My premise from the beginning was to be able to understand the Sunday Law waymark. We can only do that if we understand the dispensation before it. So Penium, at least that part, Penium to Sunday Law, is a waymark or is a dispensation that has been my premise was it hasn't been fully understood. We started going into Sunday Law messages, so we started to talk about the Sunday Law. Of course, Elder Terry had her presentation predicting Sunday Law July 2024, and then as a movement we started talking about Sunday Law. What is Sunday Law? Why is it Sunday Law, etc. And my premise has been from the beginning, like, but why are we talking about the Sunday Law if we have no clue about the previous waymarks like Penium of Boston, Concord, Exeter? There hasn't been this, as far as I understood back then, and I guess still, is that we haven't, we did not do that in the right order. That was basically my premise. Like, shouldn't we go back first and understand Penium, understand Concord, understand Exeter, for us to even be able to understand the Sunday Law? And I think that's still my premise. So before I go into the Boston, Concord, Exeter, I want to go back a little bit further back into the dispensations before that to understand the context of that dispensation, or at least a certain context. And I want to start with 1989. 1989 we mark as the time of the end. It is where we see this is where we see the King of the South come to its end. We see a deadly wound, we see a death, we see this happening in this time. We see that the United States as a world power, together with the USSR, were in a, you could call it a bilateral, it was a bilateral world power, so to speak. It was, you had the Cold War, and the two world powers were there together. Then the USSR comes to its end, and then the USA is left alone as the only world power. And it starts to use that world power as a unilateral world power. And I think this is also what Elder Parminder has been marking recently as the beginning of the Seventh Kingdom. I think you can argue that this rise of the USA as a unilateral power was also, you could see also as the birth of the Seventh Kingdom. This is externally, so I'm not talking internally USA at the moment. So I'm talking externally in a way how the USA relates to other nations in the world, so to speak. So I would say this is Eastern Front. My whole study basically is Eastern Front. That means how does the USA relate to the rest of the world, to other nations in the world, and especially the King of the South. Elder Terry's studies have always been on the, or primarily that was her primary study, was on Western Front, so internal USA, about really like Sunday Law, like what the Sunday Law waymark, as Ellen White talked about it, and this waymark, this symbol, it's something internal USA. So there's things happening within the United States. There's this war within the United States happening. This is what the Sunday law is. But at the waymark Sunday law, at this point, there's also certain characteristics that we mark externally on the Eastern Front, how the USA relates to the rest of the world. And I think that's this story, the story that I have been presenting so far. And I think it's important to distinguish the two from each other, that it's two different stories, but they need to be in sync with each other, so to speak. So the United States becomes this unilateral power.
Arjan, can I ask a question, or do you want to leave questions to the end, or do you want to just?
If it's a question on to clarify something, that's fine. Yeah.
It is to clarify something. So when you say in sync, what do you mean by that? Do you mean the waymarks have to line up?
Yeah, that's what I meant, I think. Yes. So I mean, waymarks need to line up. It's like when we mark 1989 as the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's this external event, how the United States relates to the King of the South. It's this battle between the King of the North and the King of the South. That's Eastern Front. But at the same time, internally, 1989, we also mark the beginning of a movement within the United States. And that need to, when I say in sync, I meant that those waymarks are in line with each other. It's not that on how do you say, on November 9, something happened internally within the United States, but it needs to be in that same time period where we mark on the Western, or we should see a prophecy fulfill also on the Western Front in the same time period.
So you're saying if something happens on whatever date on the Western Front, you're saying that same date has to line up with the Eastern Front?
Not exactly the day, not on the day, but in the same time period, or I guess usually we have been saying it's within the year. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So, United States grows as this unilateral power. It's now the police of the world, so to speak. And it starts to use that power, and I think also to misuse that power. Then 9/11 hits, and I would argue that 9/11 shows that the USA is actually vulnerable, and you could even argue perhaps weak. That it's so. I'm going to write down USA weak, but I mean perhaps more vulnerable. It is not as powerful, and they're still vulnerable, and that is demonstrated here at 9/11. At the same time, when 9/11 hits, they're going to use that unilateral power even more, or misuse it in a way, especially when they want to invade Iraq, because they do that with disinformation. I think purposely they try to trick the world. They try to trick the world into a war, and it's in about a year that the rest of the world realizes that they have been tricked, that the information that the USA shared with them to convince the world that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, that this information was actually wrong information, it was false. And the rest of the world realized it soon after the invasion. And the USA lost a lot of credibility there. That has been a big wound. I don't know if I can use that word because it's a prophetic word, but the credibility of the USA has been very low since that time period. And also the USA itself, the presidents after this, they never dared to be involved in such a way as before in wars, or to intervene in conflicts. Like, for example, in 2014, when Russia invades Crimea, Barack Obama doesn't do anything. He doesn't dare to, because he doesn't want to make the same mistake as in Iraq. Even perhaps they even had the information before the invasion took place, but they didn't do anything, because what if they are wrong, or what if they are proven wrong again? So they don't dare. The USA doesn't dare to intervene when they actually would have done it some years before, and at the same time, the world doesn't believe the United States to such a degree as it did before. So there is this damage done in the relationship between the USA and the rest of the world, I guess, since this time period, and that lasts for almost 2 decades. And this, I don't know if you can call it a vacuum, but this, I'll call it a vacuum now for the sake of this discussion. The vacuum that the USA leaves because it shows vulnerability, it is not so credible as it was before, I think is part of the rise of other authoritarian or other nations like Russia and China that grow and develop their power. So in this same time period, I think Iraq is a starting point for example, the King of the South, for Russia to gain power again. So Russia, 1 second. So you see the rise of the King of the South in this time period. Oh, I should have done that in red to be consistent. All right. So you see the King of the South, the rise of the King of the South, and you see in this time period that the King of the North, or the United States, as a unilateral power, loses credibility, loses power in such a way. Of course, it's still the United States, it's still powerful, but not to the degree that they want, or to the degree that they were. And that's because of the situation. I guess you could say it's because of 9/11, and it's because of what happened after 9/11. This time period and this vacuum is filled with the rise of the King of the South. So we see Russia starts to have, primarily, is going to gain a lot of spheres of influence, so increase numbers of spheres of influence. It's going to be different from here. It's not, they're not taking them in as a within the country, so it's like worldwide now. So it's not like their neighbor countries like Ukraine or Azerbaijan or Poland, as it was before part of the USSR. Now it's worldwide. So now they have influence in Venezuela, Cuba, and Libya, and Syria, etc. So Africa. So it's now a worldwide spheres of influence, and that rises into power. And I think we argued that 2019 is the point where that is at its highest point. So this is where Russia is showing that it's a world power to count with, and that it's, my camera is blurry. That 2019 we mark as raffia, and raffia is the point where Russia is at its strongest. It has a significant amount of spheres of influence. It is winning on those battlefields, so to speak, prophetically speaking, with the King of the North. It's winning the information war all the time. The United States is way behind when it's about cyber warfare and information warfare against Russia. I think we've done studies on that I think it was the Battle of Heraclea 2018, where for the first time since 2 decades or something, the cyber strategy of the United States is updated because of, I guess, because Russia intervening in meddling into the elections in 2016. The Americans started to wake up to the idea like, oh, wait a minute, maybe we should change our strategy here. But still, they were way behind and slow in developing that. And Russia has been winning those prophetic battles, so to speak, to the point where in 2019, they have a significant amount of spheres of influence, winning some spheres of influence from the United States also. And so this, I want to make this the context of 2021, because this is 2021 is the next waymark. And I want to, because 2021 marks the beginning of the line of the dispensation, the Sunday law dispensation, or at least the one that leads up to the Sunday law, 2021 to National Sunday Law. And to understand 2021, I wanted to do this short introduction to see what the relationship of the United States was with the rest of the world. And that was problematic. And what I did in my studies in January, there was a lot of reading from this article. I think it was Washington Post article, lengthy. And it showed a lot of information about October 2021 and what happened in the White House and the decisions that Joe Biden needed to make, and the dilemma he was in. And the dilemma of Joe Biden in 2021 had everything to do with this situation. The dilemma was twofold. First, the USA lost its credibility. So let me say it this way: there was a low credibility rate among the allies. So low credibility. And so the rest of the world didn't dare, or no, I should, how do I say that? The rest of the world wasn't so quick in accepting everything the United States would say, because of this time period. And that's already, that's something that has been developing for 2 decades. So there was a low credibility of that because of this history. The other dilemma, I forgot. Maybe someone can help me. I have a mind blank.
Can you give us a hint?
Yeah, what
Well, no, the dilemma that Joe Biden was in October 2021. So there was this. Oh, come on! No, I forgot.
There was a riot or something that had to get planes that get people out. Is that it?
with the intelligence services telling him that the Russia is about to attack Ukraine. Is that where you're going?
Yes, because he is
Not
going to share
saying that-
intelligences.
Yeah, not brave
He's
enough
going to.
The world didn't take much notice of him, because of the loss of credibility before with the Iraq war. Is that it?
Exactly. Yes, and
what if he's wrong again?
yeah, so he is struggling with this idea. Like he's running into the risk. Like, okay, he receives information from the intelligence services. He believes it's right, but now he has this problem that the rest of the world isn't so open to the information from the United States when it comes to these issues, because they have made mistakes before. So he needs to be very careful But he makes the decision to do something. Like in 2014, Barack Obama, he had some information. He said, like, no, I'm not going to do anything with this because I don't want to run into the same risk or the same problem as we did in Iraq. And Joe Biden said, no, we need to do something here. We need to talk with our allies, and we also need to start talking with Putin and tell Putin, hey, we have everything, we have all the information, we know everything you're about to do. Because in October they had the information about basically everything in regard to the invasion. It was about very detailed information, so that the information will be twofold. They wanted to take Putin wanted to take Kiev, the capital city of Ukraine, topple the government and replace it with a pro-Russian government. And secondly, Putin wanted to take a big chunk of Ukraine, the eastern part, and add that to the Russian nation, the Russian empire, so to speak. So in the end, in Putin's mind, in the end of this invasion, Ukraine would become a very small, insignificant country that would be pro-Russian. That was the mindset. And all that information was available to Biden in October, to the intelligence services. And Biden started to share that information slowly, step by step, with his allies. And the allies, were slow to accept it, or actually only accepted it or realized that Biden was true when the invasion happened in 2022. But Joe Biden started to say, don't trust Putin. You cannot trust him. And now I realize what my second point was. It took some time. In this time period, in this vacuum, the King of the South rises in power, not only in spheres of influence, but also in winning the narrative. Because Putin has been really good in, how do you say that? Telling the world that Russia is a trustworthy partner. You can trust them, you can do business with them. It's a stable democracy. It's to such a level, Putin started to, or introduced that narrative and that story for years, to such a level that at the end of that time period, even NATO people or nations within NATO states started to openly discuss, like, why are we having NATO actually? Because Russia is not really a problem anymore. It's not really an enemy, to such a degree that NATO was even starting to fall apart in a way. They were not so united in how to deal with Russia, etc. And quite significant. Sorry.
Misinformation, isn't it? He was really giving misinformation.
Yes, of
Wanted
course.
to confirm.
Yes, he
propaganda.
Propaganda. So the Western world started to believe that Russia or Putin wasn't actually such a bad partner. So that's the other problem that Biden needed to deal with here in 2021, because he honestly believed that Putin was an untrustworthy party. You cannot believe him, because he believed that Putin would invade. And so he needed to convince the allies that Putin actually was how do you say it? Untrustworthy. And you can, because Putin was saying, no, we're only having how do you say that? Military training. If we invade Ukraine, it's only to train the military, and that's it. And Biden said, no way, he's going to invade. We need to prepare for a war, for a full-scale invasion. And the rest of the world, like, significant countries like France and Europe and Germany, they continue to talk with Putin as if it was a person on the same level. If you could talk with him, you can trust him. I think it was a week or a few days before the invasion that Macron was still in Moscow or had a phone call with Putin, and said like, no, I think we're solving the issue at the border. And then 3 days later, there was the full-scale invasion and the open war. So Macron, the German chancellor, they trusted Putin to his word. And Biden has been saying from the beginning, no way, you can't. We're having a problem here. We need to prepare for war. So that was, America had a low credibility, and at the same time, the rest of the world, or say the Western world, was actually in good relationship with Russia. So these were the two issues that Biden needed to deal with. But he was ready to deal with them. Sorry?
I think Putin had some reasonable arguments. If I was to be contrary, he'd just have to point to the US and say, look, they just lied, created conspiracy theories, and they invaded a country in Iraq. So, you know, that's pretty reasonable from that point of view. So, of course, European nations they didn't agree with it either. So he got a serious leg up because of that. Putin did.
Yes, I mean, the USA has been misbehaving in the past, and I guess Russia or Putin has used that to say like, well, if you work with them, why can't you work with me? But at the same time, I think he's also trying to make him look nicer than he was, obviously. But yes, I agree, and I think that was also the point. That's the whole point why Iraq marks this beginning of the rise of Russia. That also was a significant event for Putin to say like, hey, if America can do this, then we can do the same. And well, that needed some time and preparation in regard to Ukraine, but I think there have been other issues with Georgia and other satellite states, so to speak, of Russia, where they have been intervening. Yes. So that was the dilemma that Biden was in 2021. And I think the decisions that he took were significant to a degree. So 2021 waymark actually starts in February, where this battle between the King of the North and the King of the South starts, and then has its peak, or its, how do you say that, decisive moment in October with so all the information I shared in January. So I don't want to go into all the details, but February marks the beginning. This is where, and this is all elder test information, by the way. So this is not something I invented or something. This is February is where January we have a new administration in the White House, the Biden administration. So Zelensky has a phone call with Biden and said like, hey, we really need your help with all the issues we have on the eastern border, the invasion in Crimea, etc. We need your financial support, military support, etc. And Biden says, yeah, of course, we want to help you, but you need to do something about corruption in your country. Try to solve the issues you have with corruption, oligarchs and stuff like that. So Zelensky starts acting and takes down a very important, significant oligarch. It's a politician. It's owner of 3 pro-Russian television stations. This oligarch is a very close personal friend of Vladimir Putin. And all the assets are frozen. I think he's even arrested at some point. The television stations are brought down. So this is the beginning. So this is where it started with Joe Biden to like do something about this, and Zelensky did it. So this is where Biden starts to poke in the eye, so to speak, of Putin. It's like, okay, it is this oligarch was a significant person within Ukraine that made it possible for Russia, for Putin, to share the Russian propaganda within Ukraine with the 3 television stations, a political party which was pro-Russian. So this was all shut down, and that didn't fell. How do you say that? Putin didn't like that, and so in February, March, we see a start of the military buildup at the Ukrainian border, and there's a direct connection with this arrest of this personal friend, this oligarch, which all started with Joe Biden. So it starts with the king of the north taking the king of the south, and then we have this military buildup at the Ukrainian border. October is significant because we see that the king of the north now starts to, when you see this history, you see that Russia is winning battle after battle, is winning the information warfare, is always ahead of the USA. It's always stronger when it comes to propaganda, winning the narrative, in the information warfare. And I think October 2021 is the point where that starts to change. This is where Joe Biden, so I have been drawing it like this. He takes the crown, or the throne, so to speak, as a unilateral power, to say like, no, we are in control of this situation. We are in control of the narrative. So in October 2021, Biden started to dominate the narratives, started to dominate the stories. Like, Putin is the problem. Putin is dangerous. Russia is dangerous at the moment, and they are going for a full-scale war. You cannot trust Putin. And that narrative started to be, and of course, Putin started to share his narrative. No, you can trust us. It's all fine, and etc. etc. Well, it took until February for the rest of the world to realize that Biden was actually correct and right. And this is where, that's what I'm suggesting. This is where the point where the USA start to get back on the throne, so to speak, started to change the narrative, dominate the narrative, and started to win this information warfare because of the decisions that Joe Biden took in October. The details I discussed in Germany. So that brings us to February. February of 2022. So this is where we mark the invasion on the 24th of February. And now the world realizes, oh, yes, Biden was right, the king of the north, or the USA was right in their story. They have been the rest of the world was very slow in accepting that message, but now they realized it and they gave credits to it. So they stood with the United States. It's like, okay, this invasion is wrong. It should have been stopped. These are my words, but basically say, yeah, sorry, Biden, but you were right. But the USA was given the credits here, and they stood with the USA against Russia as the enemy of, or as the problem in this conflict. So I'm suggesting, or I'm saying that this is the waymark of Concord. So this is Boston. This is Concord. And I want to address 4 dates for events, I should say. So that's the 21st of February. The 21st of February is 3 days before the invasion. And 3 days before the invasion, Putin, there's this declaration, Declaration of Independence, of this Donbas region. So these are the eastern provinces of Ukraine. And Putin declares those provinces as independent states. And then 3 days later, he invades those provinces. So technically, in Putin's mindset, those provinces were not part of Ukraine. So Ukraine is not invaded, basically. That's basically the story. He declares them independent, then he takes them and he wants to annex them, because that's what happens here. I'll go there later. But here on the 30th of September, Putin declares those same provinces as part of Russia now. So he annexes those provinces. But before I go there, I want to go from the 21st to the 25th. So the 25th of February is where we see the United Nations Security Council coming together, where Russia vetoes the resolution. So there's a resolution in the Security Council, and the resolution says basically this invasion is wrong, it's illegal, it should immediately stop. Russia has no right to invade Ukraine. You should understand that the United Nations Security Council, the Security Council consists out of 15 nations. 5 of them are permanent members. That's America, that's Russia, it's China, it's the UK, and it's France. And those 5 nations are permanent members. They also have veto power. That means if one of those 5 members is, when there's a resolution and they vote for a resolution, and one of those 5 members says no against it, the resolution is not accepted. The other 10 states, or the other 10 members of the Security Council, are there, how do you say that? Not the word, but they rotate the seats every, is that the right word? Every first or 1 or 2nd year, those seats are changed by other members. So the rules of the Security Council. So I think if you've seen the German presentations, I showed a short video of the 25th. What happened at the 25th? You saw the voting of, there was the resolution, who voted for, who voted against. There were some that abstained. So this whole dynamic, you could see that. And at the same time, and then we noticed that Russia was vetoing this resolution. The rest of the Security Council was very upset about the war, the invasion, but also Russia vetoing this resolution. That they came together, they stood in front of a camera, and they said, what's happening here is wrong. We were not able to accept this resolution because Russia vetoed it. But we as the world, we represent here the rest of the world, or we represent the rest of at least the rest of the Security Council. It's like, we don't accept this invasion, and we don't accept that Russia vetoed this resolution. And it was America standing there with all the other nations around it, together with America. So when Russia vetoed this resolution, they actually broke a rule. It is in the United Nations Charter. The Charter is basically like the constitution of the United Nations, so to speak. It's where all the rules and regulations and how of the United States. Let's call it the Constitution. And it has different articles, and it describes how certain commissions, how the General Assembly operates, how the Security Council operates, etc. So Article 27 is one of the articles that talks about the Security Council, and it regulates the voting system of the Security Council. Article 27 talks about when the Security Council comes together, when there is a vote, how that is organized, that those 5 member states have veto power. But there is one thing that also says, it's also noted in this article, is that when a nation, when a state is part of a conflict, this state is not allowed to vote within the resolution. So in this case, Russia is part of the conflict. It's actually the reason for this whole problem. So when there's this resolution in the United Nations Security Council, Russia is not supposed to vote because they are part of the conflict. But Russia votes anyway, and they veto it. So they stop basically the resolution. And that's actually according to the rules. The rules say when they come together, a state that is part of the conflict is not allowed to vote. So this article consists out of 3 bullets, and it's actually the third bullet that is the primary one. It says how the voting works, that there's 5 member states that have veto power, and that a nation within that is part of the conflict is not allowed to vote. That's all part of the third bullet. So you have Article 27.3 that here is broken, so to speak. And you see that the United Nations Security Council, and even after this, you see that because this resolution is not passed, it fails. Now the Security Council comes together again, and they have a vote, and they say we want to bring this issue to the National Assembly. So that is the that's the the General Assembly of the United Nations. So this is where all the nations of the world are assembled, and they're going to have a vote there as well. And it was widely accepted that basically this resolution was now brought to the National Assembly, and there it was. You cannot have a veto power in the National Assembly. There it was voted for. So there it was accepted. But it has less, how do you say, meaning, or it's less powerful when it's accepted at the National Assembly than when it's accepted in the Security Council, I think. Although a resolution in the Security Council is not binding, but it is in some ways significant. So I'm only saying this is a representation of what happened in February. You can suddenly see that the world stands up and says, we are against what happened here. We are standing with the United States. We're giving credits to what the United States has been saying since October. We can say, yes, we are standing with the United States against this conflict, against the King of the South, against Russia. So you can see the world, or the Western world, coming to Concord here. I think it's even better illustrated within NATO, because NATO was very what's the opposite of united? Split.
You'd say fragmented.
Fragmented. Yeah, NATO was very divided on the issue of Russia before the invasion. And then the invasion, suddenly they also came together on the 25th. NATO, they have an online NATO summit. They came together and it's like, whoa, we have a serious problem. We have a war on the European continent with Russia. and suddenly NATO was united. Like they said, like, oh, we need to do something about this. We need to fight against this, etc. So suddenly NATO was united in Concord a lot. So I think that is it's a nice illustration of Concord. I also think that is what I've been marking as Egypt sending its ambassadors to Rome. In the real story of Pyrrhus, we see Pyrrhus being defeated here at Beneventum. And because of the events that took place here, this is why Egypt sends its ambassadors to Rome here. So Egypt hears about the events taking place here, and they realize, oh, this Rome, this partner is we need to count with them, and they wanted to start diplomatic relations. So they started to send ambassadors to Rome in 273. And so Egypt sending ambassadors to Rome, I'm suggesting, is what happens here in February, where the rest of the world unites with the King of the North and say, like, we're standing with you. And we're giving credits. That's what I'm saying. Giving credit of what happened here, because we realized, like, what you said here, what you did here was significant and important. We didn't realize it until here. So I'm saying that is Egypt sending its ambassadors to Rome. It's giving credits to the King of the North. It's giving credits to the United States. And it was nicely illustrated in this video. I'm not saying that this video was a fulfillment of prophecy or something, but I think it was a nice illustration what happened in many parts of the world, in many ways. You could also see it in NATO, etc. But so just a short sidestep. How I see this Eastern Front dilemma is where you have the USA and you have Russia. Let's say these are the two this is what the battle is. The battle is between the United States and Russia, the King of the North and the King of the South. And it's about spheres of influence. So there's, let's say, these are the nations, 10 nations that are allies with the USA, and Russia has this amount of whatever allies. And I think what we see happening here, and what the downfall of the King of the South is going to look like, of Russia, is that many of those allies starting to change position, so to speak, so that you see Russia becomes less and less powerful, to a point where, and I guess we mark that as worldwide Sunday law, is where the USA is in full control of the world, so to speak, has the rest of the world behind it. And the USA misuses their power here, and they're going to force the world with what you see happening right now. What you watch the news now, the way Donald Trump is forcing nations to stand with them. Even Russia itself is becoming close here now. That's what we're going to say. I think this is the beginning of that, because Russia was this significant, strong world power, and I think 2021 is the point where that starts to change. This is where Joe Biden starts to sit on the throne and say, like, no, we are taking control now. And I'm also 2021 is on the bigger line of the 144,000. It's the Exeter before the Sunday law, before the national Sunday law. So we can see a little bit in Exeter. When we look at Exeter, the 2021 Exeter, you can see what is going to, you can see it. You can see Joe Biden taking control of the situation, winning the narrative, and changing its position in regards to the King of the South. And that is, I have been saying, I haven't said it in this presentation yet, but I've been saying in Germany that an Exeter is always a mini version of the bigger waymark that follows it. So I'm saying 2021 compared to the Sunday law is Exeter. So it's Exeter of the Sunday law. And what you see happening here is a mini version, so to speak, of what we are going to expect at national Sunday law, and even more at worldwide Sunday law. So that was a short side note. Was there someone that wanted to say something?
Yeah, maybe I should leave that question for the end, but I've never known the formalisation or that to be a mini Sunday law, as in the way, like, it's a prediction of the Sunday law, but I'm not sure. That's just how I see it, how it could be a mini version of the Sunday law.
Okay, yes. In my German studies, I gave some examples. I think also the ICM, Elder Parminder, suggested like for example, the loud cry or the midnight cry. Why do people cry at a loud cry? Do they cry because they see something in the past? They suddenly understand the past, and then now they understand the future, or they read their Bible and they know what is going to happen in the future. What is the reason why they cry now? Like, why is the moment that they at that point start to cry? And I think what Elder Parminder suggested there was because they see it already happening. They look at the world, they look at the situation, and they see it happening right then and there. And that tells them something about how that's going to develop even worse, but they actually can see it there. So, and I translated that in whatever, I mean, you can translate it whatever, but I said it's a mini version. It's, you can actually see it then and there. So you know what is going to happen at the next bigger waymark, perhaps even more serious or more significant, or and I think I gave some examples in my German presentation, but no, I understand that it's not a characteristic that we've always placed on that waymark. So it is perhaps my premise, or but I'm open to discussion on that subject, and I think that is
maybe we talk about it at the end so you can keep going.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to September here. So here in February, we see this invasion taking place. We see that this invasion, as Putin had it in mind, fails. He's not able to take Kiev. He's not able to take the eastern provinces. He thought he would be able to take Kiev in a few days, take those provinces in a few weeks. And in September, or actually in August, the Ukrainians start a counteroffensive. And much of the territory that the Russians took in this time period, the Ukrainians start to take back. They win significant cities back. And now Putin starts to be very nervous. He's like, okay, this is not as I expected it. I actually already expected to have Kiev, and I wanted those provinces as well. But now the Ukrainians take territory back. So now in September, he says like, okay, I'm going to dominate the narrative, or at least he tries to, within the country and worldwide. And he says, we're going to have a big party in Moscow, and we're going to annex those provinces. We're now going to claim that those provinces, those eastern provinces, they belong to Russia now. So they have this big party in Moscow. So there's this annexation of the Donbas region. The problem is that I think the majority of those provinces he did not even own there. Like, he did not have that territory yet. They were still fighting over that territory, and much of the territory of those provinces they did not even have. and they were actually losing at this point. So he claims those provinces like they're ours. And at the same day, the United Nations Security Council comes together with a resolution, and it's like, this is all wrong. This annexation is wrong, and the referenda that took place within those, because they did some referendum in those provinces, they asked the people, would you like to be with Russia or not? Well, was not quite a fair way of doing that, because people were not having free elections, so to speak. So there's this resolution again, and Russia vetoes this resolution again. So Article 27.3 is broken again. So about this waymark, there's several characteristics that we mark there. We have the number 273, we have Concord, we have Egypt sending ambassadors to Rome, but it's also an increase of knowledge. And usually what we mark at an increase of knowledge is that all the information is available. All the information is available for us to see what the issue is, so to speak. And I think here, no, let me say differently. Boston, so the beginning of a dispensation, Boston, at the time of the end, you don't see, it is invisible. You don't see the problem. You don't see the issue yet. So it is, here it is invisible. And then at Concord, you see it. You see, I think we for example, with William Miller in his internal, of course, there's not much or nothing to see in 1798, and in 1818, the information is available. It's not there yet. Nothing is being done about it, but the information is available. You can see it, and it takes until the next waymark for it to, that they do something about it. They're going to formalize it. They're going to organize, etc. So I'm saying the downfall of the King of the South externally, although I understand that we mark the final death of the King of the South at the worldwide Sunday law, I think it already begins here, is where we can see the issue, we can see the problem. We can't really see it here, although it is here, because Putin takes the decision or makes the decision to invade already here, and that is basically his downfall. It's this is where he gets himself in trouble. And now here he is in trouble because he cannot get out of this war on his own. He needs help, and the only one that can help the King of the South, and the only one that can help Russia, is the King of the North. It's the United States. So the United States now becomes the entity that needs to help the King of the South. The King of the South has a problem. Has a problem. And we can see that happens here. And now we start to recognize that this is going to be formalized or started with here in 2024. So this has been my premise, that from July to November, we see that the King of the North, and that is in this case Donald Trump, who has not been in official, was not in an official position, sends a friend, so to speak, to Putin and say like, hey, we need to start negotiations. We need to start solving this war. We need to start bloodshed, whatever the words they use. They want to to deal with the situation. So the king of the north goes to Putin, goes to Moscow. It is done in the person of Viktor Orban. But I'm really suggesting that he is just a puppet of Donald Trump. He's the mini version, he's the European Trump, who has a certain position within, or at least at this time period, he had a certain position within Europe, in the European Union, and he used or misused that power to visit Moscow and visit Putin and start this dialogue. Like, hey, we need to solve this. Are you open for negotiations? And are you willing to do this, etc. And then in November, 2 days after Donald Trump is elected, Donald Trump calls Putin. And basically what they, so basically what they agree with there is wait until January when I'm in position. So that's basically what Trump says, because it takes to January for Trump to be official in an official position. Wait until January and then we're going to fix this. So here we can see the first steps of solving this issue. It is, you can see what is going to happen here. We have this is my words, the mini version of what's actually in reality going to take place at the next waymark. So this is in a nutshell, and it was a very small nutshell, what I did in Germany last this year, last January, and so this is the story of the Eastern Front, where we go from Panium to National Sunday Law. In the meantime, we're now March, we're getting into April soon. We've had several presentations. Elder Terry has developed her presentations, and some new ideas have been introduced. I've needed to think about those things as well. So one of the things is, well, actually the final there, because in January I presented this as the death of the King of the South at the National Sunday Law, and I think that's what we've been saying previously. So I called this, we said, Deadly Wound 2021 Death, National Sunday Law or Sunday Law. And then in Fiji, the idea started to be introduced that actually the death of the King of the South is not National Sunday Law, but it's worldwide Sunday Law. And that what I call death of the King of the South cannot be marked at this way. So the study that Elder Terry did on in Fiji, and the way she proved and showed that the King of the South and the end of the King of the South, or the end of Russia, is actually at the worldwide Sunday Law with the rest of the world. I can see that and accept that. At the same time, oh yeah, and the other part is where she, Elder Terry also introduced that the fall of the King of the South is twofold. So you have an internal fall first. So we have an internal fall. So this is 2021, National Sunday Law, Worldwide Sunday Law, that there is an internal fall first and then the external fall. So external means spheres of influence, this here, where Russia just loses all its power in relation to the rest of the world. And internal is where did I say United States? Russia, where Russia loses its power in relation to the rest of the world. And internal means within its own country. And that is false as a nation internally.
Arjan, just while you're there,
Yeah.
I think I see. I think I might see the dilemma.
Okay.
Because I don't think that's what Elder Terry is saying.
Okay.
All right, I'll tell you what I think she's saying, and I could be completely wrong because there's so much happening in everyone's lives, as we all know. So if we go from clearly 2021 to the National Sunday Law is 1989 to 1991. We all agree with that. That's just established. So the death is at the National Sunday Law.
Okay.
All right. I think what Elder Terry is saying is that, well, Russia as the king of the South is dead. However, there's still Russia, just like there's the Netherlands, just like there's Australia. And so I think what she's saying is, yes, there's still a story of Russia being overthrown, just like Australia, just like Canada. I mean, my goodness, look how many things are happening with Canada at the moment. There's external events with lots of different countries at the moment that's being agitated. And it appears, and I think you and Elder Terry agree, that by the time we get to the worldwide Sunday Law, Russia, not as the king of the South, if you want to call it that, but as the country, that's part of it being dominated, or however you want to call it. So I'm not sure. I don't sure whether. I think the dilemma is you're saying the king of the South's death equals the Ukraine being the war ending, I guess. And so you're being forced to. And let me gather my thoughts. I thought I saw it. Is that how, so far, is that how you're understanding what she's saying?
Yeah,
Or
yes.
do you think
yes.
because it sounds like it's the king of the South dies in two ways, but the king of the South doesn't go beyond that point.
Yes, I get it, and that has been my understanding. I'm not sure if Elder Terry said it that way, but that's what I got from it, or at least that's how I wanted to see it. Perhaps I don't know that that the king of the South is no longer here, but Russia is still there,
just like every other country, because it's the history of the worldwide Sunday Law. There's all these agitation.
Yeah.
All these countries are starting to either agree or fall into place, even though they don't agree.
Yeah, I think also, and so this is really also still a dilemma or still a struggle how to understand it correctly is because you say 1989, 1991, but I have heard this as well, that 1998 or 89 and 1991 is here. I think Elder Terry.
Well, who said? I've never heard her say that.
Okay, that's okay, yeah.
Can I just add something to that? Because I'm pretty certain I've recently heard Elder Terry say that the death of the King of the South isn't until the worldwide Sunday Law. Now, maybe I've misheard something, but that's what I thought it was. And so far, with what I've seen with all of your presentations, Arjan, is everything you're doing is all external with the United States and the world, which to me makes sense that everything you're doing would be pointing to the external Sunday Law, as in the worldwide Sunday Law, because that would fit with the fact that it's all about the United States and the world. Whereas Elder Terry's presentations are all very much internal and, basically all about, the Republican flipping and basically the original basis upon which the United States was built is gone, and that's the national Sunday law, just for want of a better word. And I did think I heard her say it's that they're wounded at the national Sunday law and they die at the worldwide Sunday law. So I stand to be corrected. So I'm sort of contradicting you, Brendan, sorry, but that's what I thought I understood Elder Terry to say.
I know that the king of the who are we talking about? Pyrrhus gets killed, but then I guess her language would say, oh, but then there's a beheading or there's a process of that. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure whether.
I remember it, what Lynn said. I'm pretty sure I remember that. And Arjan
Okay.
as well. Yep. What she did is, because it's the end of World War II, you can line up 1989 with Sunday law. And then she proceeded to go from there. That's how she did it.
Okay. Sorry, Arjan, you keep going.
No, it's good. It's good to clarify those things and talk about it.
Actually, Ian,
Yep.
on your presentation in Germany, where you've got 1989 and 91 encircled there, from 2001, you had an arrow going up, and from National Sunday Law, you had a dotted arrow going up. And that was the rise of the King of the North. And underneath, you had an arrow going down to National Sunday Law, and then another dotted arrow going from National Sunday Law to Worldwide Sunday Law. So from that perspective, I understood, yeah, like that. And then underneath it was going down. Now, I understood from that, and I know you had a question right at the end, and you had that drawn, and to me it made it clear, but the question you had at the end was, oh, if the King of the South is gone at the NSL there in the middle one, then it's gone. So it must be the Worldwide Sunday Law. But you obviously had an arrow with its as the King of the North is rising, and as we know, that's the seventh kingdom rising up, and then at the National Sunday Law, to the Worldwide Sunday Law, the seventh kingdom rises totally. So you got two risings of one kingdom, which is the USA, or MAGA, if you like, and then you got two going downs of the King of the South at the same time. And to me, that kind of explained it.
Yeah,
Do you
I'm
get
not
what I'm
sure if I
saying?
did. Yes, I'm not sure if I did this in Germany or I guess I did it at the German meeting last week.
Yeah,
I think
that's
what I
right, you
did.
did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
that's
to
a
me,
week
that
ago.
explains it.
Yeah, and I think I got this from Elder Terry. I think this drawing I have from Elder Terry, and I think because she did it a week before that week in our meeting in the Netherlands, and where she explained this. So you have first internal, so the agitation of the national Sunday law. Here we're in the agitation of the worldwide Sunday law towards the worldwide Sunday law. Here we have an agitation internally within Russia and an agitation towards the external death of Russia. I think this is what Elder Terry has been saying, this illustration.
Okay, when you drew that, it explained it to me that you can see where the King of the South. And another thing I remember that Elder Terry mentioned is that, what the end of a country looks like, we don't really know what the total rise of the King of the North is like the Worldwide Sunday Law. At this point in our dispensation, we don't really know either. So whether it's how it's gone exactly is still to be worked out.
Oh yes, there's still a lot to be worked out. Yes. The dilemma that I am in is, okay, we have this model now. So we say internal, external. So what about the external events that take place here? Because this downfall of the King of the South, I mean, I think it's easy to see here already. So this external problems that Russia is dealing with. It's not that Russia is still rising in power here, or that it's still gaining a lot of spheres of influence in this time period. No, it's actually losing them here. So it is a simplified model. I think that's what we should realize. So there is external things happening here that continue to develop in this time period. But there is external events taking place.
Can I just say that there has
As
to be
well.
external,
Sure.
because as the internal events are happening, it's going to affect what's happening outside. It's the same with people, with movements, with countries. Whatever's happening inside is affecting what's going on outside. So it's kind of coexisting.
Yes, of course. I mean, but in the end, we don't see much about what actually happens in Russia, because it's really a closed nation. Also, media, what you see is what they want you to see. So it's difficult to see what is actually happening, but we get some glimpses, of course, and of course, just the way Putin operates internally is what we also see externally happening here. He just invades other countries and stuff like that. So it's a really authoritarian regime internally, and also externally. You can see that here as well. Yes. But I guess this is still part of my dilemma. So if we mark this, I can erase this. It's like, okay, this death of the king of the south is not National Sunday law. So this is National Sunday law, and we have two smaller ones, and then a worldwide Sunday law. Then
Can I?
yeah, please.
I've been thinking about this, the Boston, Concord, Exeter situation.
Yeah.
If you've got the National Sunday law and then you've got the worldwide Sunday law. And okay, let's assume that National Sunday law was July for a minute in last year. Then perhaps those waymarks that you're looking at externally are like markers of what's going to happen after the National Sunday law, but in a more specific way, or something that leads more or builds upon what's already gone before. Because obviously, if you're looking at the National Sunday law and we're focusing on the internal, then those external things aren't necessarily fully applying to the National Sunday law, yet they are building towards the worldwide Sunday law. So I've been trying to sort of work that out so that I'm not breaking the pattern. But I guess if they are a shadow of what's coming, if you like, or like we have 2014 is a Sunday law, so we have a Sunday, we can see that, the things that are the same that point to the Sunday law now. So therefore, maybe those that Boston, Concord that you're bringing there, maybe they actually are relating to events that are coming that haven't happened yet.
Yes.
I don't know. It's just I'm just trying to work it out in my head.
No, yeah, I get. Yeah, I understand, and I do the same. So if this is National Sunday law, and there's an Exeter here in between, then still on the Eastern Front, on this level, there must be like a story to tell from the beginning to the end, and that's all external. So this is not internal. So there is an external story that you can tell about this dispensation. It's not that there's nothing happening externally. Although we mark internal, external, there is an external events happening, and I think they contribute to its death. That happens here. The question is, what's the story of this dispensation, and then what's the story of that dispensation? And I think so. My original story was, this is the story of the death of the King of the South, and it ends here.
Yeah.
This is external, the death, and so although I have events, and I think Boston, Concord, well, we can talk about this. We can talk about Exeter, but I think those events they took place. You can take away the events; they took place, and I think they tell us a story. We should understand what is actually the story, the external events in this dispensation.
And I sort of don't disagree. In a way, I was sort of wondering if they were running concurrently, but that kind of mucks up the model a little bit. So that's why I was trying to think of. I mean, I think they're still relevant. They're just not necessarily fully applicable to the internal Sunday law. They're more applicable to the external, but they still maybe have some influence over the whole picture. But yeah, no, I think what you were just saying then makes some sense. It's just hard to see how that all fits together, especially as you're getting toward the end, because it starts off stronger, and then as you're sort of getting closer to the end of that line, it starts to get a little bit more fuzzy, you know.
I'm going to a question I have a question in the chat. It says, when we look at the structure in Daniel 11, the story of the king of the south does not go beyond verse 41. By the time we reach at verse 41, which we understand as the national Sunday law, the king of the north has already dealt with the king of the south, and it is now dealing with itself, the glorious land. So what is our basis to extend the story of the king of the south beyond verse 41, national Sunday law, through worldwide Sunday law? Good question. So yes, I agree that our understanding has always been that the death, or that first the king of the south needs to be dealt with, then the glorious land, and then the rest of the world. And I think that is, I don't think we take away from that idea, but I think and that's also a little bit of what Brandon said, is that doesn't mean that Russia is not there anymore. So when we go back to 1989 and 1991, in 1991, the death of the king of the south really meant the end of the USSR. Like, the USSR did not exist anymore, and the USSR was the king of the south. So the USSR did not exist after 1991. And so when we say the death of the king of the south is national Sunday law, I don't think we ever meant to say that Russia would not exist. I don't think we ever believed that if the death of the king of the south is here, then still Russia would be part of the story after the national Sunday law. And I think this is part of that story, that the death of the king of the south, the national Sunday law, doesn't mean that it's completely gone, it's vanished from the planet. Prophetically, you could perhaps mark it's not a king of the south anymore, but it's still power to count with. To really give
Arjan,
you
can you
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I was always confused with that one. Is that the death of the king of the south? Does that mean Putin's will be put down, that the country still exists? Or what does it really mean when you say death of the king of the south? If it's death of the king, it have to be somebody, isn't it?
I don't think it's a literal death, like somebody is killed or even the nation is destroyed or something. I think in
Maybe it got
relation.
no influence anymore. Doesn't
I'm
have
sorry?
any influence anymore. Does that mean it doesn't have any influence in the world anymore?
Yes, the death of the king of the south it's losing spheres of influence, and that's what happened here, of course, because here it was quite literal. The the USSR was Russia with satellite states, and it lost all its satellite states. And while it lost its satellite states, it lost its power, its influence, and it was gone, so to speak. So the death of the king of the south is losing its spheres of influence. And I think this story, this external story, is part of that story. The conflict in Ukraine is not a conflict. It's about Ukraine, but it's a battle between the king of the north and the king of the south, and it's about spheres of influence.
If
Sorry,
we went,
sorry to finish that question in the chat. Elder Terry did a study in Fiji actually, where she went to other parts of Daniel. So the story of Panium, Daniel 11, verse 12, 13, 14, 15 to 16 and beyond, is the story of Panium to the Sunday law and to the worldwide Sunday law also. And there you can see that the dealing with Egypt in that story is going beyond the Sunday law. So that's beyond verse 16, I think, what we mark as national Sunday law, if I'm not mistaken. But I would refer you to Elder Terry's study for that to get a more background on the answer to your question.
Can I say something, please?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yes,
war
please.
on the Western Front started first. So I guess it comes to a point where before the Western Front is totally completed, the Eastern Front started. So then it came to the point where the war in the Western Front, in my mind, I'm not quoting anybody, it ended and the Eastern Front continues. I can see that Elder Terry has been studying the Western Front in this case, internal, external, and you are studying the Eastern Front. Somewhere in between there, the two should merge together. And when you can find that merging point, I think you can make the connection.
Yeah, you
And
could
that's
argue that. So you're saying at National Sunday Law marks the end of Western Front.
I'm not saying that. I haven't given that thought, but it should come to a point where the two merge together like a PVC pipe joint, where it continues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just looking at Macedonia and Italy, same thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are you still gonna, are we in the question and answer time, or like, are you still going? Because I want to ask at the end later if you.
No, I think we're at the end. No.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'm interested in November, this phone call that happened and everything with Trump calls Putin. Then there's denials that phone call had ever happened. Immediately after that phone call, I think Lavrov said something publicly like, people had been asking how come Putin isn't congratulating Trump. And Lavrov had said something like, we're not talking to America because you're so bad to us. Why would we call you and congratulate you? And then a couple of days later, Putin is out there publicly saying congratulations, and also like Trump was so manly, and I really liked the way he stood up when he had that near miss with the bullet, and congratulations and things like that. So he sort of had this change in behaviour. Shortly after that, I think we see Syria fall as well. So there's a few major events clustered around that sort of November, December time period. Once Trump's elected, it looks like there's some kind of shift in Putin behaviour. I think maybe because he felt he's going to have his arm twisted or something like that. I don't know. So my question is, you've got that sort of thing there. It's like a bookend. You've got July till November. And you're seeing sort of there's a beginning and an end. And I get your point about Orban being like a puppet of Trump. Had you considered July being Exeter and November being National Sunday Law, rather than spanning just Exeter?
Yes, that was the end of 2024. That's why that was the conflict in my mind, because I saw the events happening, I saw the things, and I was just juggling between what are the options. And one of them was, if this is Exeter, then can this be National Sunday Law? I because back then I expected what I called this way National Sunday Law, I called it the death of the King of the South. And I wasn't so sure. Basically, I think the reason for me was that just a phone call wasn't enough for me to have to mark the death of the King of the South, because that's what you then should mark as fulfillment.
You've got May 13th too.
May 13th.
Yeah, it could be Exeter.
What was May 13th? 2024?
Yeah.
T's, is it 30 or 13?
Sorry?
No, just to finish my point, or to answer Catherine's question. Back then, I like just a phone call wasn't in my mind good enough for fulfillment of the final death blow of the King of the South. At the same time, I also wanted to have a starting point and an end point in my Exeter. So I understand July marks that beginning. Yeah, I could really see this July to November as being one thing. It starts with Viktor Orban, of course, but it ends with really this direct connection between the USA and Russia, and they actually agree on talking. So you see there, let's say, the mini version of what you expect to happen next year when Donald Trump is in the office. But I get your point. So you're saying this decision of, it's not necessarily about the phone call, but it's more about the decision that Putin takes. First, they say, like, no, we don't talk with the USA. And then they change their mind. It's like, congratulate Putin. And they decide to have a relationship, so to speak. And they decide to have talks in January. And that decision for Putin is actually the game changer, or basically a bowing down to the King of the North, so to speak. And you can also see the falling of Syria in December, losing of sphere of influence. So I know it was a question, but I guess it was also perhaps a suggestion, like, could that be the external?
Yes, because it still works as bookends, even if you did that. It's just a different type of bookending, because what you're saying about an Exeter is that it's the beginning of something that you're going to see climaxing in whatever you want to say. The whole world rushes to congratulate Donald Trump. The writing's on the wall. I don't know how Putin would have viewed that event. So I don't know. I guess I can still say it bookended in a way, but I had wondered whether you'd thought of that. I guess it wouldn't have made sense before, given your expectations on Ukraine. But now that if we're going to be talking about a more prolonged period for the King of the South, whether that aligns a little bit, especially because you have written there external in red. So you're still looking at external as well, not necessarily just internal, but you could argue maybe both. I don't know.
Yeah, good
but
point.
yeah.
Good point. I think it was discussed 2 weeks ago when I presented for the Brazilians. It was a different question, but it was connected to that as well. So that would mean so then let's just try. So you say if we no, I'm gonna do it differently. So if we book at Exeter, then it would be July to. No, wait a minute. What did you say? What did you say?
But I was just wondering whether that July,
Like this.
well, I don't know what the time period you're going to say, but if you're going to book in,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
You could end that in December if you wanted to. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe it goes beyond that. I don't know about all the bookends. It's just a thought I had.
Thank you. I'll think about it.
I've sort of got a question that's a continuation of, because I was thinking similar to Catherine. And if we go back to when I first joined the movement would say, this was a long time ago, they'd say things like the king of the, South is there to restrain the king of the North. I don't know whether you remember that, Arjan. That's the language that we used to use. It's something old. Because they're in the white, and actually Elder Parminder used that recently in a presentation. So, and it sort of surprised us because that's how we used to think. And in other words, this is a terrible way of saying it, but we should be, I don't want to say okay with the King of the South being there because they're in the way of the King of the North, and it protects God's people, or however you want to say it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I guess my question is, continuing with what Catherine said, can you see the King of the South restraining the King of the North presently? If we use the old language.
The King of the South restrains the King of the North. Yeah, okay. So restraining in effect that if the King of the South was not there, it would be the unilateral power policing the
Correct.
world, ruling the world. Yes.
So my point is the King of the South presently, has it got power that it's holding back the King of the North at the moment? And if it's not, when did that restrain stop? Because I personally, I don't see the King of the South holding the King of the North back in any way. They're just doing what they want.
Yeah.
So when did that stop? When did the King of the South stop being such a power that it stops the King of the North? And that's how we used to think about it prophetically. If we step back forget about waymarks for a second and we just step back and think, what's the actual prophetic principle here? When did the King of the South stop restraining that King of the North? And you've been looking at this more than anyone, so my logic tells me right now, without identifying waymarks, the King of the South isn't holding the King of the North back in any way.
No, at the moment, no. I don't think so.
Can I make a comment on that too, please?
Yeah.
There will come a point when the King of the North, talking about the US now, will make a transaction with the King of the South, Russia. And when that's accepted, something ought to happen then. What happens at that point when that's accepted?
Well, what is accepted? Sorry,
If right now, Donald Trump is trying to make transactional arrangements with different countries in the world.
Mhm.
It's trying to make that with Russia and Ukraine. When that's accepted by Russia, the King of the North is bound to have benefits out of that. And Russia will lose something out of that transaction. What will we call that? I don't know, but maybe I can see it in my mind, the negotiations coming to that point, just like he's doing with other Canada, Mexico, China.
Yeah, but
So
I think that
what do we call that?
I think that the war in Ukraine is the only chance the king of the south is using to restrain the king of the north. And after this negotiation done, then that's it. There's no more power for Russia after.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of, he just volunteered my thoughts, but that's what I'm asking. I'm really asking you what happens then. And I'm thinking, when you cede your power to the King of the North, then he takes power.
Mhm. I think it's not limited to this either peace deal or that one peace deal is it all. I think it's this whole process. So I'll get back to your question, but to answer Brendan's question, which was related, is when does this start? And I think you can mark 2021 as already the start, where Biden takes control of the situation. It's like, no, wait a minute, we need to deal with this, and we're going to control this situation, and we're going to control the narrative, and we're going to deal with this. And although you perhaps cannot see it so much, this is really the starting point of what we see today. Now it's Trump, and Trump does it Trump's way. But it actually happened there in 2021, where I think already Putin lost its power. I'm not saying that all its power was gone, but this is where it started, and that gradually ends all the way at the end. So it's difficult to, if I really want to mark a starting point, I would say it's 2021, and it came into a how do you say that? It went very quick when the Trump administration started, of course. I mean, if you only think that the Trump administration is now for 2 months in office, it feels like 4 years. It's been going very quick since Donald Trump is in office.
Excuse me, Arjan. It was
Yeah.
pretty profound what Biden did to Putin in 2021, because he was calling out his disinformation, and the
Yes.
King of the South had that advantage over America for years and years. So it was quite profound what Biden was doing.
Yes, I agree, and I think that was. I think I've called it MAGA 1 and MAGA 2 earlier in other presentations, that you could see, like, on an Eastern Front level, going back to unilateral power started in 2021, and of course Trump does it his way in now since he is in office. But I think that the beginning of it marks 2021, and I also think that I said that before, is that we cannot have Donald Trump dealing with this issue at the moment without having Joe Biden did what he did in 2021 and beyond. So it was necessary for Biden to step in, to take control of the situation, to stop the King from doing what it was doing. and then what made it possible for Donald Trump now to do what it does. So they needed each other. There's a relation.
So you're saying that it has to happen, the Battle of Rafah in Gaza, before where the two meet together, or the north and the south, before Panium, north and the south.
Rafah is even before here. So Rafah was
I understand, but I'm giving you an example, just out of my head. One has to happen before the other. You were talking about Biden had to do what he did before Donald Trump comes along to do his bit.
Yes, yeah, it was necessary.
A sequence.
So there's a question in the chat: where do you mark the National Sunday Law? So my model from the beginning has been saying that Exeter is 2024, and then National Sunday Law would be then. So I've been drawing it like this. So if this is National Sunday Law, I'm saying that this is 2025, starting in February, because in this story, February marks the beginning of those the negotiations in regard to the peace deal, etc. That started the beginning of February, or in the midst of February.
Arjan?
Yeah.
Just on that point that you were just making there, and at the beginning of this study and many of the other studies, you've spoken about the premise that you're building upon is that we haven't had an understanding of what Concord and Exeter were leading up to the Sunday Law. But that's not entirely true. So there was the idea of Dobbs and Jackson was out there, and there were other things. So are you just saying that you just didn't like those waymarks, those examples that were given as waymarks?
Good question. Actually wanted to go there, but I forgot. So let me erase this. So yes, good point. My initial premise was we should have a Boston, Concord, Exeter to have a Sunday Law. And yes, I know there were. I think Dobbs v. Jackson was the only suggestion so far, or back then, that was made for Concord, for the Concord waymark. And I totally agree with it. So I'm not taking away that it's just not part of this story. So this is Eastern Front, and Dobbs v. Jackson is not part of the Eastern Front story. What I missed, and I think I still miss, is this story, Panion, Boston, Concord, Exeter, Sunday Law on the Western Front. So yes, there was a Dobbs v. Jackson here at Concord, but it never really, I would say it was suggested, but I don't think it was really settled or proven, other than that the dates aligned with other tests, last study in the Vespers, and of course it's about women's rights, it's about abortion, so it's all part of. And I still agree, it fits and it's true, but to go even back one waymark back, 2021, I think Elder Tess has dealt with it quite significantly in regards to King of the North, King of the South, and I think this study adds to that a little bit. But I think as a movement, we have a quite significant, quite detailed understanding about 2021, about Panium, in relation to King of the North, King of the South. But at this point, at least as far as I understand, I don't think we have a study that gives us a story of the year 2021 internally, and I mean internally within America, Western Front. So we have 2021, 2022, Exeter, Sunday Law. That story, I don't think at the moment is not there. Of course, there are some suggestions, there is some, but just connect that there is a study that says, okay, I run you through the story of the agitation, all the waymarks, all the events, and this is the story, and that's why this is the Sunday Law. I don't think I have. I could be wrong, but I don't have. I don't think I have seen that so far, and that has been my premise from the beginning. Because I said Boston Concord. We need a Boston Concord Exeter to understand the Sunday Law, and then what I did is I went into Eastern Front, and which is fine, but it doesn't. It's not solving the problem. I did not solve the problem. I went into Boston Concord Exeter, but it was Eastern Front, and I think somebody should do the same thing for Western Front. And I know Elder Terry is dealing with that. She has a thread of 2014, 19, 2021 to 2024. So there is that story. But yeah, still, I don't think story from 2021 to National Sunday Law with a story, with events. This is the agitation, and these events you can mark, and that's why this is the Sunday Law. I could be wrong, but I think I haven't seen that, and that has been my premise from the beginning, and I think it's still the point that I'm making, and I think that is important, because if we are not having this discussion that we have in these last 2-3 months now, since we went into this cycle of having Sunday Law messages and people present, and we developed this message. Basically, what we just had, and I don't want to. How do you say that? What's the word? Sorry.
Undermine.
No, I don't want to talk it down or talk bad about it or something. But if we haven't done what we're doing now, we only had the study of Quintus Fabius Maximus Gurgius, and I think that's not good enough for us to have a solid Sunday Law message. I think we need to have a story. We need to have a thread. So this movement was all excited about the Quintus Fabius Maximus Gurgius studies. It's like, oh, Sunday Law is July 18, etc. But we did not have the story, and the process. We are in a process now to really even understand why that is the Sunday Law. If July 18 is the Sunday Law, we need a story that tells the Sunday Law, and I think Terry is doing that at the moment. And I think that is important to do and to have. So far, this is the one that I missed. I'm sorry.
Can
said
I just
you're
jump in there?
Yeah, okay.
So, speaking for me, I've seen Elder Terry clearly lay out a story, and so
Okay.
I'm not understanding what. And it sounds like you're not seeing it, and that's fine. But my understanding is it's the Republican Party. It's always been the Republican Party. That's the story. It's been the story from 2014. It's a 10-year bookend to 2024. It's the story of the Republican Party, or the new Republican Party, because the old one doesn't exist, because Trumpism, or however else you want to call it, the Sunday Law movement, it needs a beast to ride. The moment you see that church or MAGA, or however you want to define it, the moment you see that church ride that Republican Party beast, we saw that in July. The story, I think she's, that's all I've heard her talk about.
Yes, I see that.
I'm not.
No, I see that
And
for the Republican Party.
It's always been that. Elder Tess has gone painstakingly, even through the Vespers study, to explain what is going on. And even when we understood 2014, the primary focus was the Republican Party, because how else are you going to get a state or a civil power? They need to create one.
Mm-hmm.
So the moment you saw the church or the MAGA movement or the Sunday law movement, however you want to define it, when that finally found its beast to sit on, to now, and I guess if you go back to Aldous Terry's studies and look at it from that point of view, and then you start looking at, I guess May 30 with the hush money case where he's convicted. The thread's not Donald Trump. The thread is all those Republican leaders who stood out the back there on the side with their red ties. That's the Republican Party leadership. So it's not something I think if people are struggling with threads and why Elder Terry's saying what she's saying, you've just got to, how I see it, if you get that thread and it's the Republican Party, which is the dragon, now you go back and watch everything she's been talking about. Until you understand it's the Republican Party, because I see people talk, oh, it's Trump, it's this, it's that, and they're all over the place. And but the moment you identify that, and it's not just Elder Terry, Elder Terry identified that it's the Republican Party, but it's actually Curtis who explained why it's the Republican Party. So you can't even watch Elder Terry in isolation. You've actually got to look at Curtis's string of studies after the international camp meeting. So I think Elder Terry is up to about 30 presentations now. That's how I see it.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think he's been very, very clear.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I think she's been very, very clear in what the story is.
Arjan, just on that point that you made a minute ago, you said without QFMG, you said something like there's no time attached to it or something like that. There's a lack of evidence towards Terry's message. Do you want to just clarify what you mean there for me?
The only point is I'm saying if the whole development of the message that we go through at the moment, I think it's very necessary, because otherwise we only had the Quintus Fabius Maximus Goethe study, which shows July 18. But I think it's much, but it doesn't give you the story, so to speak. So I think that the story that we are that is developed at the moment, and what Elder Terry has been teaching, is I think more important and is I would say of a bigger proof than the Quintus Fabius Maximus Goethe study. I think the Sunday law, the Quintus Fabius Maximus Goethe study is a nice to have one, but I don't think should be used as the sole evidence. Oh, I'm sorry. Someone is calling me.
I'm sure she would agree with you with that, because she'll say that's not our primary witness. She's going to say that's a secondary witness. I guess part of what Brendan was saying just a minute ago is that Curtis has been doing these studies that complement the information that's given about the Republican Party that's taking place, along with the I think he's got about 9 time-setting waymarks that take you to 2024 that shows this build-up of this Republican Party. So I'm guessing I'm just saying it's not the only evidence in my mind. I think
No,
there's-
yes, true. Okay.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry to interrupt, but I have been sort of trying to find a little spot because we've been going for a bit over 2 hours, and it is getting quite late for those living further east, Fiji and in New Zealand. It's something we could probably easily do 2 or 3 meetings on without any problem at all. So if you were in the future, maybe we can even get you back. But I think we might have to. Is there anything you'd like to say just before we close, or before you close in prayer?
No, I think the most important things have been have been shared, and I have some food to think about as well.
Yes,
Um,
yes, you would.
so it's no, it's good for me like this.
Okay. Well, look, thank you very much. Would you like to just close in prayer for us then, please?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Thank you.
Dear Lord, I come before you this morning or evening for my friends, the other side of the planet. Lord, it's been a blessing to be with each other, to share the message that we so love and discuss and talk about it. Lord, I pray that as a movement and we as individuals will be able to settle into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually, so that we can be moved. And I'm thankful, Lord, for the process we are in right now as a movement, that you really get the opportunity to settle into the truth, to find the truth, to study the truth together. And I pray that you to continue to bless us, and that as a movement we will be strong and united on the issues that are so important. I pray that you bless my friends in Australia, in Fiji, New Zealand, that you help them to settle into the truth also, that the group might be united and strong. I pray that if possible, we may see each other again, we may study again, we may see each other at some point. I pray that you bless them. I thank you for this Sabbath day. In Jesus' name, we praise your name and we pray. Amen.